All right, welcome everybody. This is round two tonight. Doing a doubleheader tonight. Really good live that we had on earlier. We were talking to Idaho reps about school sex scandals, whistleblowers being canceled, and that type of stuff. And now we're going to roll into a man that's running for Georgia Congressional District 1 for Congress. Why is that important? Well, we got the 2026 midterms coming up, and we need conservatives engaged and making sure that we're making the right decisions in terms of our votes. So, this is something that I've brought up many times, both in spaces and on lives, how we need conservatives engaged and not to back off, from our gains in the 2024 election. It's kind of concerning to me. We've seen a lower voter turnout than I would like. And so that's why, I've been holding spaces. I've been bringing conservative candidates forward so that you guys can see them, so that you guys can get their names out there, and so you guys can make the decisions that you want to make for the people that you want to vote for. And I know I'm not bringing any terrible candidates out here. I'm bringing people that deserve to have the platform. I'm bringing true conservatives that want to make a difference, that want to help move the country forward, and help President Trump with his agenda, the things that you voted for. And so tonight I have Brian Montgomery, who's running for Buddy Carter's seats in Georgia. He's a veteran and American First candidate. I've talked to him personally, and I think you will like him. So without further ado, I'm going to bring to the stage Brian Montgomery. Welcome to the stage, sir. How you doing?
What's up, Jay? How you doing this evening?
Good. So happy to have you tonight. Was happy to meet you, and you were recommended to me. I didn't know a whole lot about you, but you were recommended to me by a friend that I've served with in the Army, somebody who I place a great amount of trust in. And he said, you need to hear from this guy. You need to talk to him. And I did, and I liked what I heard from you. And so I appreciate you coming here tonight. I appreciate you trusting in me to come on my live platform, because this is something that's new to you. I know that because your X handle is, fairly new. But the thing is so when I started X, I noticed that I was getting canceled on other platforms, right? I would post things or whatever, and even my mom would say, "Hey, I saw your post, but it was like 2 weeks later, right?" Well, that's because of social media. They're suppressing conservatives on these platforms, and so a lot of us move over to X. We have this. And not everybody's on it. And I've tried to, try to impress this upon local candidates, try to impress this on state candidates within Georgia, how many conservatives moved over here, because this is where a lot of stuff is happening. So I try and push you guys over to this thing, because this is where the majority of conservatives are. And another place where you're going to find a lot of them is on TikTok too. But, it's hard. It's hard because door knocking is important, going out and shaking hands is important too, but you also have to hit these pieces too, because there's a whole other audience that you're going to get from doing this. And you can use social media influencers like me, or like some of the other bigger influencers, to help get your message out there. Because if you're conservative, if you're standing for the right principles, we're going to help push you to the finish line. And that's why we do this. And this is what I enjoy doing. So I appreciate you coming here tonight. Why don't you introduce us? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your military career before we go into the politics piece?
Yeah, Jay, I appreciate you having me on tonight. We had a great conversation, and you talked to me about social media, and I'll be the first one to admit my focus has not been on social media. It has definitely been with my soldiers that I've had the responsibility to lead. And I've played around. I had the opportunity to be the PMS at Georgia Southern University. And I quickly learned that my cadets were not on Facebook. They were on TikTok and some other areas. And so I dipped my toes in it a little bit, but it just, I'd much rather be face-to-face with people, especially if I have an organization. So I didn't really engage on social media that much, because I saw a lot of my cadets 2 or 3 times a week and was able to communicate them with that way. But entering into politics, entering into the race, I'm quickly realizing, 700,000 people in the district. I'd love to shake every single hand, but that is, time does not allow for that to occur. So I've got a great team with me that's getting me on social media, getting me on X, Facebook, Instagram, and I'm learning through the process and getting on. So I appreciate folks like you who are focused on conservative values, who want to get the right candidate out and the message out and allow us to introduce ourselves. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, anytime. And I told you this before when we met or whatever, like I want to win, and I want to win for a country. It's not like it's, I'm going to, like, Democrats are crushing the social media game. And I see it as, having 100,000 followers, it's a gift. But I want to impress upon, conservative candidates that, we need to make a stronger presence out here. Gen Z, the upcoming generation, these are voters, right? These are, my 17 and a half year old just registered to vote, right? So these guys are coming up, and so we have to reach them too, because we got the boomer generation that's, kind of, they're getting older or whatever, and we got the new guys coming in, and so we got to reach them in another way. We got to bring them into the fold. We have to make them realize that we are the people that are going to make things more affordable for them. Conservative ideals are going to be the way that they can afford to buy a home. If you keep going down the road that whatever Joe Biden or whatever, like, was going down, home prices doubled under his watch. And so that wasn't the way that it should have been. But that's just impress upon them that, we have a better idea, and we have, we're going to make things more affordable for them. We're going to make, life better for them in the long run. If they just listen to us, they just, hear us out. And so that's another reason why we need to hit these social media platforms too.
Jay, I think you said something incredibly important there, and I'll take the opportunity to tell my story. But what's important is some of the things that you were talking about, affordability, and you mentioned President Trump and the Obama administration, or I'm going to get to Obama in a second, but the Biden administration, right? So in President Trump's first administration, he took whatever President Obama left him, and we accelerated, right? And that's why we want him as our president, because remember that time, the economy was booming, growth was on. People felt like they were being successful and had incredible opportunities. And then what we see is the Biden administration comes in. And listen, President Trump has the right ideas. He is leading us on a path that's going to return us back to what we saw 16, 17, 18, 19, right? But we're starting from a different starting point. Inflation was at the highest it's ever been at the Biden administration, and we need to give the president time. He's got the right mentality. He's got the right agenda. I mean, we have elected him to get it through and get it passed, get us back to those times. And one of the reasons I'm sitting here before you tonight is we were all thankful that President Trump got elected, right? And we all kind of sighed this sigh of relief. But what you've seen over and over and over again is obstacles, challenges placed in front of him by the Democrats that won't allow us to accomplish his agenda. And so what President Trump needs is more fighters up in D.C. to fight with him to get his agenda passed through. I think Speaker Johnson's done a phenomenal deal with the One Big Beautiful Bill, and the coalition that he had to build to get that through was absolutely incredible. But there are people that are falling by the wayside and not following President Trump's agenda, and we need to get the right people up there. So you fired me up right from the get-go, Jay. I don't know if that was your intent, but I'm ready to go.
No, perfect. It's, like I said, I'm I'm as far right as they come. So I'm with you. So talk to us about your military career. Let's get into that a little bit so people can understand who you are, where you come from, and then we'll go into what led you to run.
Yeah, absolutely. So what led me to run? If you would have asked me 7 months ago, Jay, if I'd be talking to you tonight as a congressional candidate, that answer probably would have been no. It wasn't on my 2025 bingo card, at the start of the year. But my entire life has been about a life of service. And that's the story that I want to tell. My life didn't start out so, perfect. Everybody thinks that life is this perfect step ladder that goes up, and, success just looks like this straight line arrow. And it's not that way. I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana. To an incredible set of parents, but they were very young, and unfortunately that didn't work out. And so my mom and I moved to my great-grandparents' farm, which is one of the reasons I have such a strong support of our agriculture community and farmers, because I know the work ethic, the faith, the community that it exists in our agricultural community. But living with my great-grandparents on the farm, it gave my mom the strength to go out and become a respiratory therapist. And that's where she met my dad, who ended up adopting me. And my dad used the Air Force to help pay for his medical school. And so we lived in Minot, North Dakota. We've lived in Pensacola, Florida. And then we settled in Atlanta. And the reason why I start with that story is some of that background. When I grew up in Atlanta, I played baseball. That's all I wanted to do. Multiple teams during the summer and the fall. And I had dreams of playing baseball in college. And I got an invitation, not scholarships, but to walk on at Indiana University. I went up to a camp at one of the family reunions that we were going to, and I stopped by the baseball camp, and I caught the coach's eye, and brought my parents in and said, "Hey, look, he's got incredible skills. I don't have any scholarships left, but I'd love for him to come up and play." So I think everything's looking great, except I injured my arm my senior year, and I couldn't play baseball. But because Indiana was the only school that I applied to, that's where I went to school. And it turns out that when you go to college, they actually expect you to attend classes and learn something. And I missed that part of the memo or in the pamphlets that they send out. And I had to learn that the tough way. And the first time grades came out, I realized it just wasn't my time. So I'm a college dropout. My first time getting out of the house wasn't successful. I had a little bit of a false start. And so I came back home to Atlanta, and I spent about a year working as a mall security guard. So Paul Bart Mall Cop is, that's a movie that hits me right here. and waiting tables. And I think waiting tables is such a critical thing that, an experience that everybody should experience, because it really makes you develop communication skills, talking to people, reading people what they need. But I was running an errand for the restaurant one day. We had 2 locations. We had one in Roswell, Alpharetta area, and one in Buckhead. And I was driving down Roswell Road in Atlanta, and I got stopped at a stoplight. Not a big deal, but as I was sitting there and I looked to my right, there was a strip mall. And inside that strip mall was an Army recruiting station. And as much as I was waiting on that light to turn green, it didn't turn green. It stayed red. And I started to get this overwhelming feeling, almost as if a voice was talking to me. And I truly believe that God has a plan for all of us. I really do. A lot of times I wish we could get a manual right at the beginning of life, and so we can flip through like the hard chapters and stuff. But as I sat there at that light and I was listening to the voice was telling me to go. I didn't have any plans to join the military that day. I'd love to sit here and tell you my life is, I've always wanted to join the Army. This is what I wanted to do. I watched the movies. That wasn't it. I left the house that day not planning to join the Army. But as I sat there at that light, I decided, okay, I hear you. And I pulled in. I walked into the Army recruiting station. I pointed at the Airborne Ranger poster on the wall and, went to MEPS in Atlanta. And 3 weeks after that, I left for basic training. It was kind of rapid fire. I will not review the conversation that I had with my mother that night when I got home. And I said, she asked me how the day went. And I said, well, I joined the Army today. There were a few choice words that went back and forth a little bit about what I was doing. And especially since my dad was in the Air Force, he said, son, you've made the absolute wrong decision here. You should have gone to the Air Force. But it turns out the Army was exactly what I needed in my life. The discipline, the physical fitness, the reset of understanding who I was, and the confidence that it built in me. I had an opportunity to go to my first duty station, and I did really well there. And one day I was briefing the battalion commander, and I was just a specialist at the time. So that's really weird to get those opportunities, right? And at the end of the brief, he said, you've done a lot of great things, Montgomery. You have some potential. We were just sitting here talking. We think we want to send you to West Point. And Jay, I'll tell you, I had no clue what West Point was. I didn't have any clue what the Army was when I joined, right? Didn't do any research. And now anybody that's thinking about joining the Army, I tell them, okay, here are your options. This is what you got to go in with. This is what you want to ask for. I was the guy that came in and said, well, I want to go to airborne school. Oh, don't worry about that. They'll ask you for volunteers at the end of basic training. Yeah, that never happened. I want to go, to RAS. Don't worry, they'll ask for volunteers after basic training. Yeah, that never happened, right? So, I was a perfect candidate for a recruiter just to check that box to get a candidate in. But at that duty station, he said, I wanted to send you to West Point. And I walked out of that tent, and the first lieutenant that walked up to me, he said, how'd the briefing go? And I said, I think it went really well. The boss said something about sending me to West Point. I don't even know what that is. And he sat me down and we had a discussion about leadership. We had a discussion about West Point was, and we had a discussion about the responsibility of leading soldiers. And that it was incredible. It got me excited about a possibility. We came out of the field. We were at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and came out of that rotation. And I called my parents and I said, hey guys, I think there's an opportunity for me to go to West Point. Is that something I should look into? And my dad just kind of laughed and he said, Brian, of all the things that you have brought to me, all the crazy ideas you've had, this is one that I can actually get behind. And so we applied. I got accepted to West Point. I had to go to the United States Military Academy preparatory school for a year. It's a 1-year school that helps transition enlisted soldiers to get ready for the academic rigor of West Point. And so I got through West Point, I graduated, and I tell people I didn't get any smarter after 5 years of school, right? The 1 year at prep school and the 4 years at West Point, I went right back into the infantry. But that's when I got the opportunity to go to Ranger School, Airborne School, and all those other schools that exist for infantry officers. As a commissioned officer, I spent the first half of my career in the 82nd Airborne Division as an infantry officer, PL, XO, and multiple deployments to Iraq. All of them were kind of no notice. We were on the GRF, and so, it wasn't planned. We weren't on a chart that let us know in 6-9 months that we were going to deploy. The phone rang and we had to go. So the first one was kind of short. It's for the first elections in Iraq in 2005. And then the second one was on December 26th. They let us go home for Christmas and gave us Christmas Day. And then December 26th, we got a phone call that we had to be back up at Fort Bragg. It was right as President Bush had made his decision to commit additional troops into Iraq for the surge. and we were alerted to go over there and start setting conditions for that. That was supposed to be a 4-month deployment to set the conditions, and extended to 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and ultimately extended to 15 months. But about halfway through that deployment, I got the opportunity to go up to the headquarters and work for General Petraeus on his SIG. It's part of a small group that helped work on his strategic talking points, prep for congressional delegations. We came back for the testimony in 2008 to give a report on the surge. And I talk about that point. It was a wonderful experience to work with General Petraeus. But I talk about that point because that was the first time that I really my eyes opened to politics and how to communicate and how to get stuff done and how the government works. And that's when it started piquing my interest of watching how this develops and how you get things done. For me specifically, it was how do we get the resources for the soldiers in Iraq to continue the tactical fight, right? After I left there, I stayed at the 82nd and was a company commander. We were training to go to Afghanistan when the earthquake happened in Haiti in 2010. And so we got deployed down to Haiti for search and rescue initially, and then humanitarian assistance after that. And we were there for about 4.5 months after that catastrophic natural disaster down in Haiti. Came back from that deployment and had an opportunity to go back to West Point to teach. And so that was something that was very critical to me at that time in my life. The first was I wanted to give back to an institution that had changed my life and given me opportunities and give back to the cadets that were there. The second, and I'm going to be honest with you, with the op tempo when I was, a lieutenant and a captain, I got married a week after graduating from West Point, and I'll tell that story in a second because it's an awesome one. But the op tempo and being apart, we were only together for about 8 months the first 4 years we were married. And so that had caused a lot of strain in the relationship and, failure to communicate. And so going back to West Point would give me the opportunity to resettle that foundation because family is critically important to me. And of course, the third reason was to continue to challenge myself academically and push myself further. And so that gave me an opportunity to return back to West Point and teach leadership at West Point and give some of those lessons learned through the first part of my career back to cadets. After that, I got the opportunity to go to Fort Stewart, Georgia. And that's where that's how I ended up in Savannah. We've been here for almost a decade, getting pretty close to that. Came here in 2016, was a part of an infantry battalion, and then worked on a different organization on Fort Stewart, and then had the opportunity to run the ROTC program at Georgia Southern University, which is an incredible program. It was truly a blessing to have that responsibility. And I was there for about 2.5 years. And then got the opportunity. I was selected for Infantry Battalion Command back at Fort Stewart. And I know as a military guy yourself, you understand for officers, it's really strange to be able to stay at one place for more than a couple years. In fact, the second year that we lived in Savannah, we got a phone call from my son's teachers, and they asked, "Are you guys moving?" And we said, not that we're tracking. Why? And they said, "Well, Andrew's going around telling everybody goodbye that, you're moving." And so when Andrew got home that night, we were like, "Buddy, what's going on? Why are you telling your teachers you're moving?" He's like, "Dad, we've lived here for 2 years. That's as long as you can live anywhere. It's time for us to keep going." So I got to be dad of the year that year because I asked them, "Well, son, do you like it here?" And he goes, "Oh, yes, Dad." And I said, "Do you like your school?" He's like, "Yeah, I love my school." And I said, "How about your friends?" He's like, "I don't want to leave my friends, but it's what we have to do." And I said, "Well, what if I tell you we could stay?" He's like, "You mean that? We could stay here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, we could stay. If that's what you want, we could stay." And he got super excited about that. And that was 8 years ago now. So it's been exciting.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because for the past 6 years or so, I've been raising my boys by myself, and when we were here or whatever, the military life is all they knew. We lived in Clarksville, we lived in Fort Eustis, we lived at Lewis, we were in Germany, they were in Florida, and so when we were here for a little bit, they were like, "Well, where are we moving next?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, man, we're not going anywhere. Like I'm retiring here. Like that's it. Like this is where you get to stay or whatever." And I promised them that they could graduate high school here, and so they did. And so yeah, that's that it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's a lot of that is this similar to me too. Because I have two teenagers or whatever, and so we went through some of the same stuff. And so you lived in Georgia, you lived in Atlanta and stuff like that, so you've been here for a while too. Talk to me about some of the stuff that's happened to Georgia, some of the stuff that's happened in the country. Talk to me of what fired you up in terms of like moving from your military career and then getting involved in politics. What really lit the fire?
Yeah, so there's really two things there, Jay. The first one was after battalion command, I had a decision to make, right? Do I continue in my military service or do I retire? And I'll be honest with you, as soon as we moved here, we knew that we had found home down in Southeast Georgia. Absolutely love Savannah, love the area, love traveling south. And so the decision was made, family first. And so when I was looking at, my wife had gone back to school for anesthesia and, started a career at St. Joe Candler Hospital. My son was crushing it in school, plays football in the fall. And, he does some acting in the spring. So that's just a weird thing, right? To go from the physicality and the aggressiveness of football. And then, a month later, he's competing in Shakespeare stuff. It's awesome to see him grow and have that depth. And then my daughter, again, has only been at one school, and she started shooting shotguns for the sports shooting team at her school. She came up to me one day and said, I want to shoot shotguns. And I was like, absolutely, let's give it a shot, not knowing how it's going to go. And now she loves it and talks trash to me every night that she's a better shotgun shot than I am, shooting ski, trap, and sporting clays. I got to get her out on a rifle range to show her, what we did. But that decision to stay here, right, was critically important. I said at the beginning of this, I truly believe that God has a plan, and whether or not it was the opportunity presented to me to join the Army, the opportunity to go to West Point, the opportunity on how I met my wife. I was a randomly assigned escort at an event in DC. It was a blind date, and she's still here with me 21 years later. And then the opportunity to run for Congress. And so what had fired me up was the direction of the country, right? And what we were doing. I spent 23 years serving this nation and defending our great Constitution, right? And more and more, especially during the Biden administration, right? This is not who we are as a nation. The division amongst us inside, the weakness abroad, the hard-pressed economy on hardworking families, open borders and chaos, right? Like the list can go on and on and on. And this is not what we fought for. This is not what I fight for. This is not who we are as a nation. And a part of that too is my West Point class. We've lost 23 of my classmates during the global war on terror. That's the most since the class of 1966 in the Vietnam War. Their sacrifices are not for this. We fought for something greater than this and truly believed in who we are as a nation. And so you start to get fired up about that and you start looking at it. Again, a lot of that time I'm an active duty soldier, right? And then I make that transition and I got a phone call the Friday before Mother's Day weekend. I know exactly where we were at because I was on the back porch with my wife having a drink and talking about Mother's Day and what she wanted to do. At 21 years of marriage, I don't try to come up with anything new. I just ask her what she wants to do and then follow it to a T, right? And I got a phone call from a very close friend. He was my roommate at the West Point Prep School, John James, who's currently a member of Congress in the state of Michigan and is running for governor of Michigan and is absolutely crushing it because he's an incredible leader. And he called me and he said, "What do you think about Buddy Carter?" And I said, John, it's not my day to track Buddy Carter today. Is everybody good? And he said, Buddy Carter is announcing that he's going to run for Senate, which is going to open up the House seat in your district. And I said, okay. And he goes, Brian, I've known you for 25 years. I know the man that you are, the servant leader that you are, and I know 100% that you are the right man to represent the 1st District in Georgia. And, selfishly, I want you up here to help us fight. And I said, okay. And he goes, I want you to run for Congress. And he goes, I really don't care what you're doing right now, but I know this is absolutely the right thing for you. In that conversation, kind of went on, and I told him, I said, John, I don't know anything about politics, man. I don't know the first step. And he looked at me, he goes, Brian, how do you walk off an airplane? And I said, John, you don't, you jump. And he goes, exactly, man. Jump into this. All the things that we've talked about, everything that I know you are, you need to start executing on that. I got off the phone with John, and I looked at Carrie, and she was like, what did John want? I said, Carrie, John wants me to run for Congress. And she had a drink in her hand, and she just kind of, glared at me over the cup, and she set it down after a pretty long sip, and she just looked at me and said, absolutely, Brian, this is exactly who you are. So when I look at inside the state of Georgia, right, especially here in the first district, I get questions all the time, are you fired up to be a representative for this district? I'm like, hell yeah. We are so blessed in the district. And I don't know how many of the viewers are here in the district or not, but the first district in Georgia runs from Effingham County, kind of Savannah in the north, all the way down the coastline in I-95 down to the border of Florida. There's 15 counties in it, and it's absolutely incredible. And I tell people, like, what fires me up is, number one, this district defends America. You got a military base at Fort Stewart, Hunter Army Airfield, Naval Submarine Base Kings Bay, our federal law enforcement training center in Brunswick, 2 special operations forces, and the hammer of the 18th Airborne Corps, the nuclear trident down in Kings Bay. This district defends America. So it needs a representative that understands that. It has been 32 years since this district has had a veteran represented. There's over 65,000 veterans in the district. So to have a representative, to have the opportunity to represent a district that defends America, now I'm surprised I haven't jumped out of this seat. The second part of that is this district drives the American economy through the ports in Savannah, the ports in Brunswick, our railhead in Raycross, our manufacturers that exist here. There's not a single thing when it comes to the supply chain coming from overseas into the country or our American-made goods that go out from our ports to across the world that are in demand. We drive the economy right here in the first district. And then, last but definitely not least, we feed America through our agricultural community, our row croppers, our cattlemen, our fish industry off the coast. This district feeds America. And then, of course, we have our timber industry that fuels it. But there are so many blessings just in those opportunities. And then the people that live here inside the district is absolutely incredible. And so when you look at where we were going as a nation, you look at the stress that the Biden administration, you can tell I got Obama on my mind tonight too, but the stress that the Biden administration put on the hardworking families that drive this country militarily, economically, and with our conservative values, it needs a representative that's going to fight for them. And that's why I'm here tonight with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, you're right. You're right about a lot of that. Southeast Georgia, like, it's a lot of people don't know about it. I didn't know about it until I moved here. I'm from Minnesota, and Alaska is where I primarily grew up. My mom lived in Minnesota. My dad lived in Alaska. I used to spend every summer with my dad in Alaska. And then, I joined the military at 18. So, and hadn't been home since, but, here we've got a lot going on. And, one of the things that, as I'm talking to people and I see here on social media, one of the things that, like, a lot of representatives or whatever, like, they talk, we hear from them or whatever, and they say they're all the right things. We think we're going to get a conservative or whatever. And, like, we don't actually get this conservative person. They actually, they just kind of fall into the swamp with a lot of other ones. And so, when I think about, like, putting a veteran in place there, I know that, like, what these oaths and stuff like that mean to us. What, a lot of veterans or whatever, like, they're going to do the right thing when nobody's looking, right? That's our, Army, one of the things we used to say in the Army. And so, in terms of, like, putting somebody in Congress or whatever, like, America is hungry for people that are going to do the things that they say. We're tired of, putting people in Congress that say they're going to do the right thing for us, and then as soon as they get in there, it's before we know it, they're insider trading, or they're just looking out for their lobbyist donors or whatever. And so America is thirsty or hungry for, somebody who's going to actually do and follow through on the things that they say on the campaign trail.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think a lot of times people get involved in politics because, one, they want to make a name on themselves, right? They want to get the social media hits. We've already determined I'm not on social media as much as I should be. So that's obviously not one of my goals, right? But I need to get on social media to let people know who I am. And the other one is to get rich. I don't need to do this. This is not something that I'm looking to increase my wealth. I'm doing it for the American people and the people of the first district. The amount of, when you decide to go into politics and you throw your hat in the ring, right? I mean, there were a lot of prayers in this household before I made that decision. You got to understand that you're putting yourself out in front of people. There's going to be incredibly harsh things said about you. You're under a microscope. Everything you say is going to be done. I mean, it is just as easy to say, yeah, I'm good. There's no reason for me to put me in that spot, right? To put myself, to put my family in that type of situation. But when it comes down to it, and if I can continue to be an example for my children of what believing in something greater than myself looks like, right? To sacrifice any type of personal gain so others may have the opportunities to succeed, to become the best versions of themselves. If I can lead that example for my children, that's exactly what I'll continue to do. I've already fought for this nation for the last 23 years, and I will continue to fight for it until my last breath. It's the only thing that I know how to do. And I think a lot of times, when you look at politics, one of the most important things, and I was talking to the team about this earlier today, I can go back to the times where I was in command in a leadership position, right? And I would always make it a priority to go down and speak with soldiers, right? To make sure I understood what was going on the ground level. In those times in my career where I didn't have that opportunity, or I couldn't prioritize that the way I wanted to, I could see the entire organization start on a downward trend, right? Because as the leader of the organization, if the people know you, then they trust you, and they know whatever hard decision you're going to make, it is going to be in their best interest. But if you don't have that connection with those people that you're responsible for, and they don't know who you are, then that's when it starts to sway and people start saying things about you, right? And the rumors start. And so I think one of the critical things and why I'm in this race is, and what I've done in the 3-4 months that I've been in this race, time has kind of lost all meaning right now, is getting out, introducing yourself to the voters and letting them know that I'm going to be here. I've told people on the trail, this isn't, you get to see me one time. I want your vote. And oh, by the way, if you're willing to donate, that's great. And then you never see me again. I will be down here constantly. And I think that's one of the things that's been lost is we elect people that then go to DC and never come back down to the district. And whether or not that's because they're afraid to face the people that they're responsible for, right? And get bad news or get yelled at or get, disagreed upon, or it's taking lobbyist money, right? And getting very secure up in DC and taking that. That's not what I'm doing this for. I'm literally on the longest job interview I've had in my life, that starts in the primary season and then continues on to the general, and then hopefully continues on past that, right? As long as I am doing the job and the American people in the first district know that I'm working hard for them, then I'll be there for them. But I'm not getting into this to hide somewhere in DC. I'm not getting this to stay in Savannah, right? I'm getting this because I know what it's like to be responsible for people from all over. I know what it's like to be on demand 24/7, right? Because as you know, there is no off day in the military. Right. You want to have that weekend, you want to do that, but especially in a leadership role, that just doesn't exist. So I've led that life. I know what it requires, and I went into this eyes open with the commitment to the people of the first district to be their representative and their voice in DC.
Yeah. And I threw your handle down here. It's scrolling across the bottom. If you're watching, if you're listening, please give Brian a follow. Help his X handle get out there. And I got my friend here, Molly.
Who's that, Molly?
Molly, yeah, she's a rescue dog. She's a lover. But She joins me on some of my lives, but yeah, no, I appreciate the things that you're doing, because I talked about this with Don Brown. I guess it was last week. He's running for Senate. He's running for Tom Tillis's seat up in North Carolina. And one of the things that I said is, that like there are a lot easier routes for a military officer to go, right? You can go, work for, Lockheed. You can go work for one of these companies or whatever, much more lucrative endeavor in terms of like, putting yourself out there and running for office and stuff like that, and with no guarantee. And so I appreciate you guys going at it and getting after it, and recognizing that we need help. I've talked about this a lot. We are not out of the weeds by any means, and in 2026 is so critical. Like yeah, President Trump gave us kind of a breath of fresh air, but the thing is like, if we don't win in the 2026 midterms, if we don't continue this in 2028, we are screwed in a lot of ways. We're the underdogs, and we are coming from behind, and we have a lot of things working against us. And so, we have the media that's working against us. We have social media that's working against us. That's why I'm thankful for X and Rumble, because you can actually say some of the things that you actually mean, and it allows conservatives to get up there. People criticize Elon Musk, but the thing is like, he helped us win the 2024 election. I don't care what you say about the guy or whatever, like, he helped us win. And so, it's a tough road to hoe. And this is why I feel the obligation to push you guys to get your message out there, to help you, get reach the voters or whatever. And so I just, I appreciate you guys going at it, and looking out for our country. And this is, it's a tough life, because you're essentially doxing yourself by running for office and putting yourself out there and putting your family at risk. I mean, really, let's be honest. And so, it's a dirty, nasty world out there, and bad things happen too. And so I just appreciate you guys willing to put yourself out there, willing to put your face out there, and willing to go at it for the country, because there's no other reason than, it's either to make money, or it's because your sense of patriotic duty. Those are the only two reasons.
Yeah, it's been tough, right? Because when I talk to people, number one, I just want to let everybody know, Jay, you're worth it, right? Sacrificing whatever may come in this race, right? You're worth it. The people of the first district they are worth it. They're worth putting myself out there to get the opportunity to represent them. And this nation is worth it. When I sat back and I thought about it, and I said, if I didn't do this, if I didn't take the opportunity that John gave me the spark to do, right, how would I feel? And I people that have served in the military know this over and over again. If you don't take advantage of that opportunity, if you don't give your full heart to it, you sit back and you regret it, right? And you start saying, oh, what if I would have done this, or what if I would have done that? And I know I would have been 10 times harder on myself sitting on the sidelines, because when I looked across the field, there's some great Americans that are in this race. There truly are, right? And I get asked all the time. I think there's 7 candidates for the Republican primary right now, and they're like, "Man, 7 candidates, that's a lot of people." And I tell them, so I'm excited about that, because there are 7 individuals that believe in this country to raise their hand to put themselves into this situation. And I know for a fact that we will only make ourselves better. So at the end of this race, the first district gets the best person to represent them in DC. I'm going to give you a little secret. I think it's me. I know it's me. But through this process, we will get the best person to come out. But you are worth it. I mean, we've only met one time, but the fact that you sit on this, you started this show, you get people's names out, you get the representatives that you believe in are going to be the best for the country. Like, you're doing your part, and you're worth it, because you're a part of the process. You've said it a couple of times now. This isn't about me, though. It's about me and the fact that I'm trying to earn your trust, and I'm trying to earn the support of the people of the first district. But this is about all of us. This is about every single person in the first district. and having the opportunity to represent that, right, is incredibly important. But throughout my career, my focus hasn't been on the here and the now. The focus has been getting that next group ready, that next generation of leaders ready to fall into place after me, right? Whether it was teaching at West Point, having the opportunity to run the ROTC program at Georgia Southern University, I have been focused on that next generation to make sure that they're ready to go. And a part of this campaign is getting the young people excited to be a part of this process. Because, you know, what we've seen is when we lose focus on it, when we don't have the right people involved and we don't communicate about it, the amount of sacrifice that has gone into this country to get us to where we're at right now, right? The most powerful nation on earth can be gone like this if we don't prep it for the next generation. And I'm not in this to be in this 30, 40 years. You know, I'm in this to get the country back on the right track and then hand it off to the next generation so they can continue to move us forward. And so when you're looking at everything that's going on, the opportunity to do this, that decision to get in this race, it's truly not about me. It's about us in the district. It's about us as the state. It's about us as the country, and getting that next generation ready to come in and take the reins from us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, that's you hit the nail on the head right there. And you know, again, that's why I'm big on the social media, the point or whatever, and like you guys getting out here and talking to them, because you're hitting new audiences, you're talking to, you know, different people and stuff like that. And this is where kids are. You know, I'm late Gen X, right? And you know, a lot of people from my generation or whatever, they're like, you know, get away from social media, get away from the digital piece or whatever. But that's not the answer, because these kids are not going away from, like, they're on social media, they are on their cell phones, they are on the internet, they are on these things. So you have to go out and get them where they're at too. So that's an important piece of this, because yeah, you know, for the older folks or whatever, going out and shaking hands or whatever, door knocking and stuff like that, you'll get a lot of them. But like a lot of the kids, that's not where you're going to get them. You are not going to get them in that way. And so we have to reach them in other forms. And so, you know, I saw this personally, door knocking, because I was a Trump Force 47 captain or whatever. And then, you know, door knocking in around my local area or whatever. And a lot of these kids, you know, they're nowhere to be found or whatever. You can meet the parents and stuff like that, but like the kids, you got to reach them in a different way. And so that's why I try and impress upon you guys about the importance of social media, and not to be afraid of other platforms like TikTok. Conservatives are so afraid of TikTok. I'm telling you right now, there are fantastic conservatives on TikTok. I've TikTok is actually pretty fun for me. It's one of the biggest places that I post. I actually get better impressions sometimes on my TikTok than I do on my huge X account. So, but you know, the thing is like not to be afraid to go out on and use these platforms, and to you know, just that's where some of these kids are, and they're going to be voters. They're gonna help us win. So that's where we have to reach them, and we got to let them know that we have a better plan.
Yeah, throughout conversations, I've been approached, in the younger generation just doesn't know how to get involved, right? Like, I want to be a part of the process. How do I get involved? And I think that's where Charlie Kirk had done such an incredible job of inspiring and getting people moving in the direction to be involved in it. And you know, the tragic loss of Charlie through his murder was incredible, but you know, at the same time too, that has sparked just this enormous fire in our younger generation, because they appreciated what Charlie was trying to do and who he was, and now they're just jumping off of that, right, and continuing that progress. And I think we as candidates, we need to capture that in order to coach, teach, guide, mentor them through this process, and how you can be a part of this, how you can have an impact, and how you can shape the nation going forward. And it's just so critical. And I think you've told me to get on social media at least 40 times now tonight. And so the message is received.
Yeah, you know, yeah. Well, Democrats are killing it on social media. I just, you know, you guys like, and the other piece is Democrats are willing to pay their social media influencers and stuff like that. They're willing to put their money where their mouth is. And so it's not that I want you guys to do the same thing, but I want you to understand that they are killing it in that realm. And so that's, I want to see conservatives on there. I want to see you guys out there because we have great personnel. Like there's great, we're not just dry old people on you know what I mean, like out there, like there are funny conservatives, they're funny, like it's JD Vance owning the memes that's hilarious. I love it. Like it's absolutely hilarious. Donald Trump being on social media is absolutely hilarious. I don't care what anybody says, he's killing it on social media, hundreds of millions of views and stuff like that, because he's willing to reach out there. So same thing with you guys, congressional candidates. You guys need to do the same thing. Like, honestly, embrace it, because this is where it's at, and you can reach a ton of people.
Every time you say XJ, I think you posted, I don't know how long ago it was, but the on Facebook was some like old, decrepit, overweight guy, and it was like on X, and it's like this huge buff guy. And so every time you start talking about X and the difference, and then getting on X, it keeps popping in my head. That's why I keep laughing.
Yeah, well, don't pay attention to like so we get dirty out here. I know you guys have an image that, like, we get out here, like, don't pay too much attention to what I'm saying, because some of the stuff might embarrass you. But the conservative social media influencers and stuff, we get, I like to say, we get dirty out here, because we get in the trenches, we call people out, we go to battle, on some of these fronts or whatever, which you guys don't need to do that. We let us handle that piece, and use our platform to help elevate your message, because I think you have a good one, honestly.
Yeah, it's incredible. And the opportunity to do this, I got into this understanding what some of the basic things that people were concerned about. Safety, right? Number one. And listen, I truly believe, and you and I have both traveled the world, right? A vast majority of the people on this earth really only truly want three things, right? They want to live a purposeful life. Bring purpose to something, whether that's nonprofits, whether that's for a company or whatever it is. But they want to do it in a safe environment, right? And they want to leave better opportunities for their children than the ones that they've had. And so I knew that kind of going in, just from the people I've interacted, whether it's in combat environments where the entire area around them is completely destroyed in rubble, to natural disasters, and the hope that exists in these people because we were there, right? And they're helping them. But again, going across the board, it's really those three things. And so I kind of understood with the dynamics of people want to be safe. And thank goodness for President Trump and closing the border, right? How many times were we told, oh, we can't close the border, it's too difficult, it's too complex. And he gets in office, and guess what?
Immediately.
Things closed, right? Like, and that's how it gets done, right? And now you see this backlash. I think Trump derangement syndrome, right? Anything that the president says, there's an automatic regurgitate, just opposite viewpoint of it. The man is trying to secure us in our country and provide national security. And then we have the Dems that continue to support criminals, continue to support illegal immigration coming in. Like, the man is just trying to protect us. And that's one of his main jobs as the president of the United States. And so we've got to continue to get people in there that are going to fight with him to do that, to secure our population. When President Trump came into office, he reminded us what strength looks like, right? When we lead with confidence across the world respects us. When we close the borders, our communities thrive, right? When we protect the American workers, our economy grows, and that's where his focus is. And so when I don't understand this, different viewpoint of, no, we've got to protect the criminals in our country. Like, why? What is going on there? And so to have the opportunity to go in and fight to maintain the security that we're receiving under President Trump's leadership, right? That's critically important for me, and to maintain that. And I knew the hard pressures of the economy and the Biden economy that was pressing down on hardworking families. But what I've learned more and more being out on the trail is, what does that actually look like, right? The pressures on our farming community and on our farmers when it comes to regulation, on our small businesses, right? There are so many people out in the first district that I've met that have incredible ideas, that are passionate about what they believe in, and they want to, make a business out of it and sell it, whether it's services or goods, right? but we've put so many obstacles in their face, the government has, that prevents them from following through with that dreams. We don't create growth that way. And I think with the president coming in and trying to remove those regulations to spur that growth in the country, he needs a fighter up there to keep doing that. So those types of things are incredible. I mean, security and growth is absolutely incredible, because that then turns into affordability for all the hardworking Americans in this country.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And yeah, it's just it was really tough under Biden, and some of it happens so fast too. This is what I don't think people talk enough about this, and I bring it up often, but like they really halved your dollar, right? Home prices doubled, grocery prices doubled, but really, what does that mean? It means your dollar is worth half as much. That's the better way to put it. It's not that your home price doubled. It didn't double. Your home price stayed about the same, really, but your dollar was cut in half. Really, your buying power was cut in half. That's the better way to look at it. And to how fast it happened was just, I don't think people talking about that enough. But the other piece is like, in terms of like, solving the problem, where do we go from here? Supporting President Trump. It's Congress and especially the Senate. Like, Congress is one frustration. The Senate is a completely another frustration. We send these people there, and we expect them to help President Trump along the way, because we elected President Trump. He got the popular vote, right? He got all these, Georgia, especially. Georgia's a red state. We want to see this agenda push forward, and to see people wishy-washy on these things, and just it's really frustrating from the user standpoint, because a lot of people are ready to move. They have political fatigue, right? A lot of people put in a lot of effort last year, and then they wanted some help, some relief and stuff like that, and it seems like President Trump is not getting the help that he needs to make these things happen.
Yeah, and we need to give the president more time, right? I think at the beginning of this thing, I talked about what he did with the economy after President Obama, right? But he started off in a worse condition that President Biden left him. And so it's going to take longer to get things reset. We can lose it quickly, and it's always harder, right? I'm sure you know this, like when you stop working out, it's harder to get back working out, right? Like, when you start losing that momentum, and you're feeling that pressure, it's always harder to get back into the right spot. And I think we need to give President Trump, by getting fighters up there at the midterms, because listen, if we don't get out to vote in 26, if we don't have candidates that light fires under people to get out and be a part of the process, his agenda's done. Like, hard stop. Everything that we worked hard about. And you and I know this, right? When we train for combat, we train hard to be able to get to the objective, but the objective is not the end state, right? Getting the president elected was not the end state. Once you get to the objective, that's when the hard work starts. That's when you have to fight the enemy. That's when you have to go toe to toe with the enemy and destroy them. And so I can understand we worked our tails off to get the president back in office, but that's the day the work started. And we need to continue to push through that and win. And I believe President Trump's mindset is exactly there. That man, that he works nonstop for us, but he needs those people behind him to have that same mindset that say, hey, sir, we got, the American people elected you, and now you need the fighters with you to continue to fight through the objective, right? And that's the mindset that I'm trying to bring to this is, but you've got to have the right candidate that's doing it for the right reasons, not just because there's an expectation that he follows in footsteps, right? But is there for the right reasons to do this for the people, and are going to engage with them and go up there and fight with President Trump.
Yeah. All right. Well, so talk to me about like the things that you like. Talk to me about committees that you'd like to be on if you get into Congress, and talk to me about like what are your priorities once you get into Congress, like different things that you would try and push for.
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, House Armed Services Committee. it would be a main goal of mine, especially with those military bases I talked about at the beginning. I know it's very tough, if not impossible, for a freshman to get on energy and commerce, but that is definitely would be a goal of mine to get there, especially for everything that we have in the district. And then agricultural is going to be there, so I can continue to help our agricultural community in the district. It's going to be hard to say no to things because I want to be a part of every single thing possible, including working, with and for our veterans to get them the services that they have earned, right? It's not that they deserve, they've earned those. And so, it's going to be really hard to get up there. And somebody, the favorite question is, what are you going to do on day one? And it's hard to answer that question, right? Because when you look at all this stuff, when you talk to the voters, when you talk to the people, and there's so many different issues going on, you want to work on every single one of them. Luckily, I can walk and chew gum at the same time, so I know that I can have that ability to do that. But when it comes back to day one, there's really two things that I can control as a legislator, right? That is in my control. Everything else, I have to get up to DC. I have to build the coalitions. I got to be a team player in order to build that, so we can get the bills passed for the that mean a lot for the country and for the district. But day one, there's really two things that I will be in control of that I promise I will do on day one. One is reaffirm my oath to the Constitution. That priority number one. And then number two is establish offices inside the district focused on constituency services so that the people in the district know that they have access to me, they have access to the team, and we can help and support them. And when they need us to fight for them, we will absolutely fight for them. Those are the two things that I know I can do. And listen, Buddy Carter's running for Senate. And one of the great things that he's known about inside this district is the team that he has put together and what he does for the people of the first district. And if I can follow in those footsteps and that legacy that he's leaving behind of his service towards the people in the first district, then that's going to be a main focus to carry that on.
Yeah. This is a side note, and
yes.
So one of the coolest things that I've ever done with my social media account. So Mark Lucas, who's a good friend of mine, former Article 3 project member with Mike Davis, right? And he does veteran action, and right now he's pushing the Veterans Bill of Rights, right? So he's pushing to get some veteran services, the things that we were promised, whatever, like codified or whatever. And so he's pushing this bill. Anyways, I tagged Buddy Carter, and I also did use his platform to send an email out to Buddy Carter and also Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff or whatever. Use his platform. It's actually a pretty fantastic little platform. Anyways, I did this. In the next day, Buddy Carter co-sponsored the bill that he's pushing or whatever to codify these veterans' rights. And I'm talking about TRICARE, right? A few years ago, they were looking to move us to Medicaid, right? Retirees, right? And President Trump said, absolutely not. We made this promise to him, but Mark is trying to get these things codified, the things that they promised to us, so that they can't use them as leverage. They can't use this as a tug of war. They can't take them away from us. These things were promised to us. We gave them the best years, the healthiest years of our lives, and we spent years away. I spent 5 years in combat. My oldest son spent he had four deployments where dad was away. And so, a lot of sacrifice there. And so, there were certain things that were promised to me. And so I shouldn't have to worry about that, after the fact. You promised this to me my entire career. And now it shouldn't be, a tug of war on whether you can give me this benefit that you promised me my entire career.
Yeah. And listen, it's not because we do it because we expect all these things at the backside, right? We're able to do the things that we do because we know that we're going to be taken care of on the backside, right? We put ourselves in more dangerous situations. We drive our bodies beyond their limits because we know that we're going to be taken care of, right? Just like in any organization, I used to tell my medics, you are the most important person to me right now because all these other guys, they will only go and do the things that we need to do because they know that you are here and that in their worst moments, you are well trained to be there for them, right? At the same level for veteran services, we do this not because we expect them on the backside. We put our bodies and our our minds and everything into what's in front of us to defend the Constitution and the nation, because we know no matter what happens, we're going to be taken care of. And that promise needs to be kept.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, I share that with you because for me, that was a very cool thing. You know, you can do real things with social media. It's not just internet or whatever. You're not just out here shit posting or whatever, you know, like you can do real things with it. And it's not just huge accounts that can do things with it too. So it's just, that was a cool moment because when Mark posted the next day that he co-sponsored that bill, I was like, that's badass. Like, I don't know.
Walking a little bit taller, you're kind of like,
yeah,
right,
no,
yeah,
that's
like,
awesome. Like 100%, like home run right there for sure. Like if you can do something, get your rep to sponsor something with a freaking social media tag. Like absolutely, that's freaking awesome. So well, sir, I've had you for about an hour. I know it's getting late for you, and you're super busy, dude. So I just want to be respectful of your time and, give you an opportunity to kind of close it up and say any last things that you wanted to say. I'm here as long as you want to stay, but kind of give you your closing pitch if you want to.
Yeah, Jay, I'll kind of tell you like I tell everybody else. This isn't a one-time gig, Like I hope you'll have me back often. I can give you updates on what we're up to, And then when we win the election, and I'm up there as the representative representing the first district, know that last night I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said, you're the guy, and I said, I appreciate that confidence, and I said, but when you say that, I need you to understand that you're now coming on the team Montgomery, right? You're coming onto this team, and I can't be everything, everybody, everywhere at the same time. I wish I could. And maybe when I get on social media, full time, I'll understand everything that's going on in the district. But I said, I appreciate your support, but you're coming onto a team. And what I ask you to do is keep me aware of what's going on, right? When there are those key events that, I need to be at, I need to know about them. Come up on the net, let me know. Whether you send the hashtag and you include me on the post to get my attention and come in, but that's what I need help from, and that's what I'm learning from you and your experiences, that you've had that opportunity to have that action come in and come to fulfillment, right? And that's incredible, but that's because you're a part of the process, and that's what we need in this district. When I say it's not about me, it's about us. That's that team going forward, and I want to be that representative for the people of the first district. There's really nowhere else to say than, if you're in the district, I look forward to meeting you soon. I want to earn your trust, right? I want you to get to know me, because I think it's critically important for that the representative that you're sending up there, and you have full confidence that when you send me up there, that I'm going to fight for you. So I really hope everybody has a great night. My website is www.brianmontgomery.org. I ask you to go visit it. And then in there are the social media links that you can hit the handle at Vote Montgomery on X, and then on Facebook, on Instagram, and it sounds like TikTok's in the future. I'm kind of side-eyeing my team right now to make sure that they're listening, so they jump on that. But I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me to come on and introduce myself.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming here tonight and spending time with us. Follow at vote_Montgomery on X. We got like just under 800 people watching us right now. So yeah, follow him on there. Help get his message out there. It only helps us to have more conservative candidates out there. One of the things is, that I see within you all is a lot of you have really great ideas, and we only get one of you at the end of all this. One of you is going to come to the finish line, but the thing is, it's like you guys have great ideas that are going to make the one person the best version of what we can get. And so I appreciate everybody. Like I want to have a strong a conservative pool to pull from, and then we pull the strongest one out of that pool. That's ideally what we want to do, and we don't want to have somebody out there that's just ordained or whatever, like before all this happens or whatever. Like we want to get the conservative person, the fighter that's going to go out there and look out for our values, the things that we want to get done, and to help support President Trump, because he is the person we voted for. And so that's what we want to get done. So I appreciate you coming in here tonight. I appreciate your service. thank you so much. And then, thank you for doing what you do, because this is not easy, and you're a busy dude, and I know that's a heavy strain on you. So thank you for what you're doing.
I appreciate you, Jay. Thank you.
All right, brother. Have a good night. Appreciate you.
All right. Have a great night. Bye.
All right, there you have it. So follow at vote for underscore Montgomery. He's running for Georgia Congressional District 1. Obviously, you heard from him, a solid veteran candidate, America First candidate, somebody who's really looking out for the people. And, follow him on social media, help him elevate his platform, help him, get out there, and that way people can decide, who they want to vote for, and get the best conservative candidate in there. So I appreciate you guys watching tonight. Please repost the stream. We've got just under 800 people in here watching right now, so I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Comments. I thank you for hanging out with us, and thank you for the ones that reposted already. Appreciate you all, and you guys have a good night. Thank you.